as the hand just swings into the face of Jaylen Brown. And look, it probably would have gone back in the other direction anyway, but it was in exactly that moment that the entire game turned. Here comes Jaylen Brown later in the second quarter. He would score 25, Celtics extending a lead. Final minute of the second quarter, tied at 52, but not tied for long. Jason Tatum was unbelievable yesterday. He had 25 in the first half, and he was just warming up. Third quarter, Tatum would single-handedly outscore the Sixers. This was a game at the break. It wasn't. About 3 minutes later, here comes Tatum heating up over Embiid once, over Embiid twice. Even he himself can't believe what he's done. At that point, he'd outscored the Sixers 8-3 in the quarter, but he was just getting started. Here comes Tatum up, left side, three-pointer. Tatum 13 points in the third. The Sixers just 6. Not shown any offense from the Sixers because they didn't show us any offense to give to you. Tatum again getting it done, 42 through 3. It's a 25-point game. It's all over in the fourth quarter except one piece of business. With that 3, Jason Tatum goes to 50. Put one more finger up, my man. That would be 51 points for Jason Tatum, the most ever in an NBA Game 7. And the Celtics blow out the Sixers and move on to the conference final. So the record held by Steph Curry of 50 points in a Game 7 lasted exactly 2 weeks. By the way, Tatum has dropped 50 now in a regular season game, an all-star game, a play-in game, a playoff game, and now a Game 7. On the other side, it was quite the opposite. A disappointing end to a season for Philly and the MVP, Joel Embiid.
I got to be better, and I will be better. That's what I'm focused on. All of us, we got to, come back and find ways to just keep improving and, help the team. You can't win alone. I can't win alone. Me and James, we just can't win alone. That's why basketball is played 5-on-5. So, we just need everybody to just, try to keep finding ways to get better and, we'll be fine.
Okay, so there are so many ways to look at this. Woj is with us from Chicago. Huge week there with the draft lottery and everything tomorrow night. So he's be with us all through this. And here's the deal. We started this morning talking about the process. Yesterday was actually the 10-year anniversary of the day trust the process first became a phrase. And as Woj correctly pointed out, the process, as it was originally conceived, ended a long time ago. But the one piece of it that remained was Embiid. And so the big question, the one thing that could someday justify the process would be if Embiid leads them to the promised land. And so in many ways, while it might not really be officially the right way to describe it, it felt like once and for all the end of the process yesterday.
It did, because it has to put to rest this idea that this was all built because of losing on purpose, and the idea of collecting draft picks and the currency of hope that draft picks deliver, because you sell the idea that one day this is going to turn into a championship. And it really ended up just being a coping mechanism for losing. Fans were chanting trust the process while they were going through epic losses. Right. But then you get draft picks. It's what you do with those draft picks that lead you to the That's the real process. And here they get one player that they still have all these years later. And that one player is struggling to get over the hump, not to just win a championship,
right,
to get to the Final Four. Mm-hmm. He can't even get that far. So thoughts and prayers to the process. We can finally stop talking about that as a good idea, and I think the NBA should celebrate it, because the idea that you have to now include a play-in tournament, this became such a fad that you needed a play-in tournament to incentivize winning and get everybody away from the idea that losing and collecting draft picks was the way to go in this league.
Another piece that they got in the process was Ben Simmons, whom they turned into James Harden. So I guess in another way that was a piece of it that was on display yesterday. So let's start with Embiid. I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected. And that's, what it's like to be a superstar in the NBA, expected to carry things. So when you hear Embiid talking there after the game and you see the disappointing way that it ends, what are your thoughts on him?
My thoughts are, he got what he wanted, the MVP.
Yep.
And he wanted to prove that, which he did.
Yep.
With that responsibility comes the bigger target, which is now in the playoffs, which he got. And now I think he just... I think when fans, and I'm going to say when fans watch, we think what we see in regular season is going to translate. Some understand it, but it's another thing is the reality. because the teams get an opportunity to make adjustments. We saw those videos all morning how Boston made adjustments. They took away the pocket pass, which was their pet play, which he feasted off of, where he either got a jump shot or got himself into an ISO. They started to take that away. They started to load guys over. Now Joel has to be a little better. But my thing is, he says one thing that he said that I didn't agree with. James Harden got them a win in Game 1.
Yes.
I think after Game 1, everybody's like, what? How did the Celtics let that one slip away with no Embiid and James Harden turning back the clock, if you would?
He won them Game 1 and Game 4.
Game 4. That's what I'm saying. So it is possible. But 15 points, 9 points by your two superstars, your two guys didn't get it done.
Let me ask you a question a different way. Because Embiid, he deserved to be the MVP. I voted 100%. For him. I mean, he absolutely deserved that. No one, but what we have here, when you have a classic center, I know he likes to go outside every now and again and shoot the long jumpers and even take the threes. But when you're the defense, you're delighted that he's doing that. He really is sort of your last vestige of your classic back to the basket center who likes to operate down there. Nikola Jokic is entirely Nikola Jokic 10 years ago, we would have called him a point guard. Now he's a center. Right. But the point I'm making here is when you get into a best of 7 series, where the other team can scout you as intensely as they do, where they can change up their defenses and find what works and all of that. Is that the reason that teams don't build around guys like that anymore? Because it is too easy, for lack of a better way of putting it, to stop when you know exactly where he's going to be.
I'm going to start by saying this. Credit to Doc Rivers for getting Joel to get back into the post. A couple of years ago, he was settling for threes, and it was just annoying to watch because he can make his living and be an MVP if he put himself on that block or mid-post.
Right.
And now the game has changed.
Right.
But, you just got to figure out how to still be able to dominate because, yes, and I'm going to say this going against what I said earlier, it worked in regular season. So now you have to kind of mask it, cross screens, down screens, just, one side to the other to get duck-ins for him. It's something, but it takes that player also to say, give me the damn ball, like you said. Yeah. It takes that point guard. I was fortunate enough to play with Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, and Mark Jackson, 3 of the if you look in the top all-time in assists outside of LeBron James, those 3 guys will show up there.
Right.
And the one thing they did when I was either struggling or needed touches, like here, Jason Kidd will break the play and say, hey, turn around, post up. Or he'll bring the ball up, he'll throw me the ball early.
Force you to be aggressive.
Force me to be aggressive.
He would tell you when you were maybe like, you weren't being aggressive enough. I'm making you aggressive.
Absolutely.
That's what a good point guard does.
That's what great point guards do. And not that James Harden isn't a great point guard because he did lead the league in assists. And he set guys up. But it's just next level. Those 3 guys were next level, and they understood. The MVP needs.
So maybe that's what Joel needs, is the force multiplier at the point guard position.
Look, Harden is a confounding player because, at the same time, we can say, and let me put the stats up, actually, Cindy. I have his numbers in wins and losses in this series. There's no way they win the 3 games that they won in this series without him. Agreed. He was spectacular. In 2 of the 3, he was by far the best player on the floor. But then you look at the other 4 games, and he disappears completely. It is the ultimate in a peak and a valley. So he's a confounding player. And I want to bring Woj in on this thought because it's a confounding way. Trying to define him is difficult to do. And Doc Rivers, same thing. Woj brought up a good point earlier today. Doc Rivers, he held this team together through some complicated stuff. So they really have 2 choices right now, Woj, right? You keep knocking there or you don't get there. They can break this whole thing down. They can get a new coach. They can move on from Harden. Or they can keep trying with this group. So take us through the futures of those 2 key pieces, Harden and Doc, as we sit here now.
Well, the Sixers don't get to decide on James Harden. He's a free agent. So he makes a decision. Now, they get to decide how many years on a deal they want to give him, how much money they want to invest guaranteed. And certainly that's going to go into, I think, the calculus for James Harden on this is his last big deal in the NBA. He did essentially a 1+1, but essentially a 1-year deal this year. But, you look at James Harden in the postseason, and listen, he's had his share of disappointments, especially in really big games late in the season. But you look at in Houston, when they took a Golden State dynasty, maybe as good of a team as we've seen in the last 15 years in the NBA, that Golden State team took them to 7 games when, I thought Golden State was a significantly more talented team than those Rockets teams. I think both Allen, Vince, you'd probably agree with that. And I think Boston's a significantly deeper, more talented team than anybody in the NBA, not just Philadelphia. And as you said, Vince, James Harden won them 2 games in this series. And again, you're judged on advancing and you're judged on your performance in a Game 7. But I do think there are some caveats with James Harden. I thought he was able to carry those Rocket teams. If Chris Paul doesn't hurt his hamstring, do they get past Golden State and maybe steal one of those championships? Those are all what ifs. They didn't happen. Golden State raised the banners. But I still think James Harden, if you're Philadelphia, is the best option going forward. He's really the only option. But at what